Hello friends, and welcome to the last day of 2022. So I've seen quite a few people doing sort of year end reviews or best of 2022, and I thought rather than doing some review on gear or things like that, I thought I would share with you my best learnings of 2022. Mostly related to music production, but I'm sure there'll be one or two in there also related to other things. Keep it a bit more interesting. We do spend a lot of time talking about music production. So I think the biggest learning I had this year related to music production is that mentorships with super experienced musicians are worth their time in gold. Specifically the ones I did with Sebastian Mullaert and Wiedemann completely changed my life. They're both on Circle of Life, and I completely not only produce music differently since then, but I actually look at life quite different, and have sort of newfound appreciation for topics like meditation and creating space for music expression and creativity. So if you have, I think Sebastian's was under 500 euros, I can remember, and Frank, I'm not entirely sure, I think it was a little bit more expensive, but if you're thinking to part with that kind of money for a synth, unless it's like your first synth, but otherwise don't do it. I can really recommend to sign up for one of those classes. I guarantee you it will catapult your way of making music forward more than 3 years in the studio with a new machine. So yeah, learn from the best. I mean, those guys are obviously, some of the best electronic musicians I know, at least of. I'm by no means on their level, but I've learned so much from them, and I'm very happy to share some of those learnings with you in the work that I do on Rapid Flow, also my own sort of recognitions around sound engineering and best practices that I found over the year. But in all fairness, a lot of what I'm sharing was heavily inspired by those masterclasses. So head on over there, it's absolutely worth it. I think the second thing that right now, especially in my state, you can probably hear I'm sounding very nasal, comes to mind is the importance of health. I've been dealing with a horrific cold for the last 10 days. I'm slowly coming through it. And I realized for the last months I've just been burning the candle on both ends. I have a full-time job, and then any free minute I was spending either making music or working on Rapid Flow stuff. And I definitely overdid it. And I think my body just kind of said, okay, if you're not willing to take a break, I'm going to take a break for you. So yeah, for the last 10 days, I've literally barely been able to do anything. So take good care of your health, take enough time to relax and regenerate. And do things that are smart, like going for walks, doing sports, eating healthy, and all those kinds of things. I'm guilty of being one of these people that sits in a chair from morning to night, because when I stop my job, I'll eat something, come back down and work on music or videos, and that's not smart. And my body's kind of giving me a shot across the bow now, like, dude, get it together, man. Take care of yourself. So that's the second thing I think that I would share, that I think is really, really an important topic to not lose track of, even when we're super inspired or for chasing our dreams or working in flow or in inspiration. Our bodies and minds need time also to relax and stay healthy. Another one, and this one I think is very kind of related to music and a little bit superficial maybe, but it's been a game changer for me, which is how I buy gear. And I'm sure I'm going to maybe I don't even need to do a more in-depth video about this. So the way that I've suffered from GAS, so gear acquisition syndrome, like most of us, and and the way I do it now is that I have a rule that if I want to get or need to get something new, something old in the studio has to go, so that balance in the force is maintained. This has the great effect that you don't really have to keep spending money on equipment once you've reached a certain level in your studio. And you think really hard about what is it that you're going to sell that you feel you don't need anymore in order to acquire this new shiny thing. And I think the good part is that the things that you don't use all the time, even though they're maybe very cool, but they're just not being used, they tend to go first, obviously. And you replace them with things, and hopefully you replace them with things eventually where like you couldn't imagine parting it with anything more in the studio because it's all core to your workflow. And I think honestly then you're done. You know, if you have enough things to express yourself with, then you're done. So a friend of mine will vouch for this. I had a thing called The Vow, and then I had The Vow MK2, which was me vowing that I would not spend money on music equipment, and it went horribly wrong. It actually just kind of got worse. That didn't work at all. But this new system that I have, which I guess we could call it keeping balance in the force, works. Yeah, because I have to sell something before I get something new. And that's... yeah, it's totally taken my interest off buying things, because that would mean, what am I going to sell here? And there isn't really much left here that I would part with. So I'm not spending that much time anymore looking at gear and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's, I guess, my third learning of the year that I wanted to share with you. I think related to music production, what I've really come to appreciate, specifically from Frank Wiedemann's classes, and a bit also in Sebastian Mullert's, I saw that, but Frank Wiedemann really went quite in depth on this, is the speed with which he is able to produce a track and test it live before he even bothers to do a sequence. He uses actually a similar system like I do with 8 tracks that I've been showing on Rapid Flow. And he does everything in those tracks. I do it a little bit different, but he manages to put all the drums in one track and things like that, which is really cool how he does it. And yeah, I watched him produce a track in real time in the mentorship, and it was amazing to see just like how, you know, he doesn't even play a guitar really, he said himself, and he grabs a guitar and just puts some distortion and delay on it and just made some sounds, and all of a sudden he had an amazing sound background that, you know, he didn't even question whether or not it's going to be good because he doesn't know how to play guitar. He just went for it and recorded some loops, and all of a sudden he had something that sounded so organic and so cool and different, but just going for it and just experimenting with the stuff that's in the studio, you know, some cheap ass reverbs that he had lying around, some massively expensive channel strips, whatnot. But yeah, just being able to work fast, being experimental, and kind of following your creative spark in that moment was really eye-opening to see. So I think that's been something that's also deeply changed the way that I work now, where I try to capture things really quickly and don't think about it too much. Is that 5? I think that was 5. Let's do this to 10, then we should be done, right? 6 would be absolutely, and I should have mentioned this earlier because it was so life-changing, but this is Sebastian Mullert's sharings on kind of his views on the importance of being clear in your sort of presence and space, head, to be able to express creativity, which he shared is, you know, is always there. It's not that you have to learn to be creative, it's always there. We just tend to block it with our minds and judgments, self-judgments and expectations, and you know, and for him it was all about, you know, what he shared was about his method, I guess, was about, I'm not doing justice to this, but you know, what he shared was that, you know, for him, for example, taking a long walk in the park or having a good discussion, a conversation with someone that he's going to collaborate with, sometimes over 2 days, puts him in the space where actually creativity, the spark, can kind of just express itself, can happen. And I thought that was really insightful and really beautiful. And a big part of that has to do also with presence and meditation and awareness and clarity. And I think he's really, really onto something there. And I've been also really, applying that to my work in the studio, to make sure that when I enter the studio, I'm in a certain space and don't spend too much time kind of trying to figure out technical things or going in with big expectations, but just trying to hold the space for something to naturally express itself, and just recording that and recording a bunch of things and then just seeing what happens, and then processing that further at a later stage and not judging anything that I do in that space. So yeah, that was also definitely a huge eye-opener, and just changed the way I feel about making music and when I'm in the studio. So thank you, both Sebastian and Frank, for those inputs. Are we on 7 now? I think we're on 7. What else is there that I think really... I think one thing that has made a huge difference for me from a point of view of, I think, the quality of my music, if I can assess that myself, at least how happy I am with it, is finally, after all these freaking years, being able to figure out how to make groovy hi-hats and drum patterns and percussions, and somehow kind of at some point just finding the knack of how to do it. And I'll share a specific video on that. Very much it's about training your ear to hear the difference between a few milliseconds more late or early. And I found a really good plugin with which you can kind of do that and shift things in time just with a knob. So I'll share that with you in a specific video, but maybe the short essence of it is that it's good to keep your kick, nailed down to the grid and make sure it plays very tightly with your metronome. I think that's kind of obvious, but sometimes some kicks feel like they're not on the grid, which means you need to go into the envelope and check it. And then after that, build around it with hi-hats and everything. And if they don't feel right, make a short MIDI loop and just start moving those notes, or all of them, and move them around until they go in and they sit where they need to be. And then change the velocities and move them around. But just making this like, if it's a 16th hi-hat, you can probably get away with just 4 hits in a 16th pattern, because that's usually how often they repeat, and just move them around, and at a certain point you're going to be like, wow, okay, this is the right sound. This is the groove that I've been looking for. And then obviously working with shuffle and things like that helps tremendously. So I'll do a separate video on that. That's definitely been one of my biggest music production learnings this year. That was 8, I think. On to 9. Let me think a little bit. I think 9 for me has been very much about the way I record things now, which is no longer about trying to fatten things up or make things huge coming into the computer, but actually the opposite, cleaning things up. I've shown that with my output, making things sort of just have enough bandwidth to express that sound and not have like everything full bandwidth, because it's impossible to mix and you have to work very hard on it in the DAW. So tracking things on the way in, how I expect to hear them in the mix, and recording them done has been a huge productivity kind of ramp up. And it's just much more fun because I don't spend so much time staring at a screen and tweaking a mouse around. So I did do a video, I'll link it here somewhere, on how to recreate that workflow in software. So if that's interesting for you, go check that out. And I realize I should have linked a few other videos, maybe if you're completely new to this channel, in the previous bits that I've shared, so I'll do that. And I'll definitely be adding links to the masterclasses, maybe the 5-6 best masterclasses that I've either joined or seen sort of offline. Well, not offline, but asynchronously is the word, I guess. So kind of paper, whatever, you know what I mean. You click a button and you can watch it, rather than live, which Frank's and Sebastian's are live, which is cool because you can ask questions also. So I'll link those best below this video, those best masterclasses below this video, so you can check some of those out also if you're interested. What else do we have? What has made a huge difference? Not related to audio at all, production, but actually to the Rapid Flow project, which is, I guess, what I can call it now, which what I'm doing also on this channel, besides just my music, is how important it is to sometimes just follow your heart and do things because you love to do them and because it just feels right. So for those of you that haven't maybe seen this all from the beginning, which is probably most of you, I'm sure you have better things to do, but the way Rapid Flow started is because I had been in a bunch of masterclasses. I'd seen piles and piles of tutorials on YouTube, and at a certain point it all just kind of clicked, and I realized, wow, I'm able to do tracks really quick and they sound great without me having to invest massive amounts of hours. And I thought, wow, I want to share this. Like I've been in the situation where it's taking me way too long to do music. I want to share this so other people have access to this way of working, so that they can get ahead with releasing their tracks rather than spending hours and hours in loops of the beat trying to perfect things. So I went on some forums and asked people if they would be interested in this, and I was really happy to see the response was yes, very overwhelmingly yes. And I started with this, just saying, listen, I want to offer it for free, but I can't because the space is limited on the platform that I'm taking, so I'm just going to do it for $1, and that's where this all started. And loads and loads of people bought it, and people tipped me, and it just kind of came out of my heart, and it was never something that I wanted to make into a commercial endeavor. And that shifted a little bit later when I realized how much work it was to actually keep all this going and to spread it. And we did try to keep everything, well, the Rapid Flow template at $1 for a while, until we miserably realized that there's no way. It's always going to end up costing more money that way than it generates, to have all the infrastructure up for that. So, we had to put it up to $5. But I am offering anyone that's interested in having it, that doesn't have that, the money around. I mean, there's people from India and all kinds of places that end up on my web shop. Just please write me on the chat and I will send you a code. Anyone, if you don't have the money, if you can't afford it right now, you're saving for a big synth or something, that's cool. Write me on the chat of the shop and I will send you a free code. Because the goal here is really to share the knowledge. And I did add more sample packs and things now, so that this is starting to now look like it could become something that actually supports itself and maybe even generates a little bit of profit, which is amazing, because I love doing all this, but it does take a lot of hours. So it's great if it also, something comes from it on a financial level. But to be really honest, and this is where I actually was getting to, just sharing the knowledge and seeing what people write when it clicks for them, and just even seeing people write like, hey man, I loaded your template yesterday and I just experimented with it last night and it was so much fun. I was like, yes, I know exactly how that feels, because I've done it myself here many times with a couple of mates. Just being idiots around the studio and just pretending we're, I don't know, David Guetta or something, and tweaking controllers. And David Guetta was not exactly what I meant, but you know what I mean, like acting as if we're big name DJs while we're just hanging out in the basement was very funny. So just seeing people get value from this and them kind of moving forward quickly on their production sort of career is hugely rewarding, and just seeing people happy, in their comments and grateful and appreciative of this, and that it helps them to probably, I hope, produce better music faster. That is great to see. Like I'm super, super happy for that. That is amazing. That actually is a reward in itself. But the other part's definitely not unimportant. It has to be a balance of both. I think there's nothing wrong in making money with things you love also, but it's extremely rewarding, not just from a financial point of view, or actually much more from a non-financial point of view, the work that I'm doing here. So yes, keep your comments and feedback going. They're very much the fuel behind this project. Please. Yes, and then the last point, and this is actually one of the most important points. I'm a little bit embarrassed, it only comes to my mind now, but my missus knows me well enough to know how I mean it, is the importance of keeping your priorities straight. And as much as I'm a passionate musician and driven by sort of inspiration and the will to create, I realize I've been way too deep into getting all this set up, for example, for Rapid Flow and making videos and figuring out how OBS works and stuff, that I haven't spent as much time, quality time with my family as I wish I had, looking back now. And I promised myself I'm going to change that. So if I'm not going to be releasing kind of, 2-3 videos a week, then my apologies. But obviously my family is extremely important to me, and I should be there for them in a capacity that I'm really able to share and absorb and give, and maybe be patient if our little son is kind of, being challenging for a moment or whatnot. So keeping priorities straight. There's nothing more important, I think, than our families, our friends, the people we love, the people we share this journey with, and our health. And all these other things are beautiful, but it's never worth sacrificing the most important things for something like music, studio work, things like that. So coming at number 10, but actually the most important thing for sure. So yes, those are my my learnings, things that I wanted to share with you. Just looking at this video, if you're wondering who's the hippie playing the hang, that's me. That's my missus in the background with our son when he was pretty freshly born. This was in the north of Germany. We used to have a little camping place out there, and this, I think, was a morning sunrise, sunset, sunrise probably, because he used to get up really early. So this is me playing on a borrowed instrument from my friend Thomas, and I thought it would make a good background music for this video. So there you go. And with that, I'm off to go spend the rest of the day with my family and go into the new year together with them, and leaving this for you here. All right, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful start to your new year. I wish you health, I wish you success, I wish you joy, and I wish us all peace. May this new year become one that is known for the transition from whatever it is that's going on now to peace. That would be amazing. All right, guys and ladies, take care. Bye bye.